Well, it's been a week now, just over a week since I run the 50, and it's given me a lot to think about. I took a couple of days off just to recover and let some of the soreness go. After that, I did a couple of walks, sort of a couple of 5k fast walks, just to get the system pumping again and moving and so forth. And actually, I've recovered surprisingly well, considering how tight my legs are. And in doing the 50, it's given me a fair amount to think about in terms of form. So the biggest problem that I had, and for anybody that watched the 50k event video, I started to bitch and moan about my quads and my hamstrings getting particularly tight.
Hamstrings are tight, calves are tight, feet are sore.
That's something that I was very conscious about towards the end of that ultramarathon. They just seized up, and I proceeded to do a little bit of research the last week, and what I concluded was that I was overworking my quads and my hamstrings compared to my glutes in particular. And for those that have kind of followed the journey thus far, you'll probably remember that I've had quite a significant injury issue when it comes to my hip, my back and my glutes, and it's something that stuck with me and was very painful from December right the way through to the beginning of March, to the point where my attempt at the 50 and subsequently the 100 in a few weeks' time would be in serious jeopardy. So training was not fun whatsoever, and I had a few low weeks actually through that, as well as COVID and so forth. But that aside, what I noticed was my glutes weren't working properly, and that got me thinking towards a couple of things, which was really the strength in my glutes, particularly my left. Although I have to say, when I was doing the 50, I noticed that both legs were stiffening up quite badly, so my right as well as my left, which does suggest that the way I was running was more of a problem rather than the strength actually in the glute muscles. I've been doing the strengthening work. My physio will be pleased to hear that. I have been a few times a week, been doing my glute bridges and my banded glute raises and so forth, and working on strengthening the hip flexors and the sides of the hip, as well as the glutes themselves, and so they're fairly strong. I think what was happening was that I just weren't using them properly, and so I did some research last week and tested a few theories out. Something that I was thinking about as well was knee lift. Again, when I go really long, I'm always thinking about conserving energy and reducing a lot of movement to as little as possible to both absorb impact. Being a heavy runner, impact makes a difference. It makes a massive difference actually over a long distance. So if you take somebody at my weight, 100 kilograms, times that by 3, which is the force that goes through your body with each step that you run. So I have 300 kilograms of force going through my ankle, my knee and my back and my hip with every running step that I take. If I times that by 120,000 steps in 100k, that's 32 million kilograms of force that my body has to deal with. Now compare that to running 10k, it's only 3.2 million. So that's an extra, best part of 30 million kilos of force that my body has to contend with, and you won't notice bad form when you're doing 10k. You'll sure as shit notice it when you're doing 100, even more so if you're heavy. And it's something that I think a lot of people who are in the 60, 70 kilo weight bracket, I think never fully appreciate is the impact forces that go through. Of course, as heavier, you burn more calories, you consume more energy in order just to move that mass forward. But it's the breaking down of your joints and your soft tissues that make a difference. You know, that 30% differential over 100k is 10 million plus kilograms of impact force going through your body if you're heavier. And our joints are no different to somebody who's 70. You know, a guy that's my age at 70 kilos, his joints are not much different to mine, despite being 30 kilos heavier. So you end up running with a degree of economy and impact economy as much as you can, and that's not necessarily the best thing. And so I've been testing what happens with lifting my legs a little further. And I'm not talking much, you know, that as a sprinter, high knees, really high knees, almost 90 degree plus to your body are really important. You need that for that explosive drive. But what's really interesting is I've discovered that there's this reflex action, which is the cross extensor reflex, that actually enables you to get more out of your driving leg if you lift your front leg higher. And we're talking a small adjustment, 1/2 inch to 1 inch, just lifting my knee just over 1/2 inch higher with each stride actually meant that I was going 10 to 15% faster without actually expending a great deal more effort. And it was the weirdest sensation, just being out there jogging over the last few runs and just consciously running to lift that knee higher, which in turn creates a better heel flick, which in turn creates more recoil efficiency from your lower legs, like your Achilles and your calf. So it's been testing those things out, I think, that I'm kind of concentrating on. I've got one long run left to do, really long run, so that's going to be 30 to 35k this coming weekend. Within that, I'll be fully kitted out, pack food, electrolytes, full water load, all of those sort of things. So I'll have my weight that I intend to race with on my back, and that will be a good opportunity again just to play around, particularly as I get more tired in the second half of that run. That'll be an opportunity to play around with things like my zombie running and my knee lift, so that I can get that really well tuned in as best I can in the few weeks that I've got left. And then that leads me into my taper period, and that's going to be cutting the long run distance down to about 10 to 15 kilometers next weekend, and then just doing a few short 5k runs. I think I've got planned in the schedule after this weekend, I'll have a couple of days just to rehab, and then it will just be a few sort of 3k runs, 20-minute, 30-minute runs, just nice and easy, just to keep the legs turning over. But a lot of the attention's then going to go on to some hip mobilization. I'll carry on with a bit of strengthening work right up until about a week to 10 days before the Jurassic 100, and really focusing on that stretching, recovering, just getting the muscles loose and as pliable as possible I'm ready for the misery that I'm going to put them through, because this ultra that's coming in a few weeks' time is whilst it's amazing, it was also my nemesis from last year, because this is where I had a go at running it last year, and I had to retire with a DNF because I ended up the last 16 kilometres of my run, so going from 60 odd kilometres up to 84. I had to retire at 84 because most of that distance between that final set of rest stops was my feet were bleeding. I'd skinned them, I'd lost the skin on my toes and everything else. So I'm also very conscious of making sure that my feet are well prepared, and my shoes are a little bit wider this year, a different set of socks. I'm looking at the taping aspect as well, and I'm going to trial a few little things this weekend with regards to taping, just to make sure that I've got that right, and then it's just getting everything ready. So yeah, I managed to get out for what was a beautiful weekend. Spring's certainly here, the sun's been shining, and this is a little of what my run looked like.